Before the world lost Patrick Swayze, the adored celebrity revealed a truth few were ready for by removing the dazzling exterior of Dirty Dancing. Beneath the swoon-worthy romance and iconic choreography, there were personal troubles, harsh conflicts, and a stressful environment that drove him to the edge. You learned to dance from her. Yes, she taught me that you have to strive for what you want, and that you can't expect things to be given to you for free. Not everyone survived. Tempers erupted, and injuries were concealed. The set was mythologized as a surreal getaway for years. However, Swayze's last remarks revealed a much more sinister reality. He had to tell the truth now. Let's reveal the truth. Patrick Swayze's untamed journey. Some lives don't start. They sprang forth. Time and equipment weren't used to carefully craft Patrick Swayze's life. It burst into light, rhythm, and intense anticipation. Houston, Texas, existed long before movie posters and the famous hip-swaying scene in a lakeside cabin. August 18, 1952. A woman who controlled a dance studio like a kingdom of motion gave birth to a boy. Patsy Swayze taught more than just dance. She used muscle and song to shape soldiers. Not even Patrick was spared. He wasn't given a soft route since he was her son. They threw him into it. He began training as soon as he was able to stand. In figure skating, jazz and ballet, Patrick pirouetted as the other kids played baseball. He learned to leap, while other boys learned to shoot baskets. Don't mistake him for weakness though. He was angry, full of fire and fists. He played football at school with the same ferocity he displayed on stage, hoping for touchdowns and college scholarships. The day his knee gave way under the force of a tackle that cut all sound, that dream fell apart. It would have been a complete stop for most. It was a reroute for Patrick. He understood deep down that he wasn't intended to pursue normal, but he never expressed it out. Something else, something more difficult, something out of the norm, shifted his universe. Patrick was entering martial arts studios, learning ballet plies and throwing kicks at the same time, while his colleagues struggled with algebra and college decisions. It was a collision of anger, bewilderment and ambition. He referred to this as his self-deprecating rage. Even he was not really sure what it was yet, but others referred to it as focus. In 1972, after having his knee repaired and his future uncertain, he got aboard a bus that was going far from the sweltering sidewalks of Houston. New York City is the last destination. The studios of Joffrey and Harkness Ballet stripped him to nothing there, in the chilly solitude of practice halls, and then painstakingly, sweatily, and brilliantly rebuilt him. His last name didn't matter to the teachers. His dashed hopes were of no concern to them. He gave them the fire in his feet, which was all that mattered to them. It was said in artist circles that there was a single instance that had the power to alter everything. Elliot Feld, a choreographer, had an idea for a dance collaboration between Swayze and Mikhail Baryshnikov. Prior to that knee betraying him once more, Patrick was supposed to climb with the stars. That dream was crushed by reconstruction surgery. What might have broken others only caused Patrick to change his course once more, this time in the direction of something riskier. But not the man. The screen comes after the stage. His early performances were subdued and even corny. He performed for Disney as a dancer, wearing Danny Zuko's leather in yet another borrowed limelight. He made an appearance on Broadway in Grease, but it was always his. The crowds leaned in. There was something raw and unpolished about him, unreservedly human. Hollywood took note. Few would recall the disco-infused roller skating movie Skate Town, USA, which he sailed into the flickering lights of cinema in 1979. However, his presence, it was difficult to forget that. The 1980s swept in just when it appeared he might fade into the smoky backdrop of Hollywood's never-ending casting wheel. Along with it came a series of parts that put his spirit and talent to the test. A dying soldier in one heartbreaking MASH episode, a Marine trainer in Extraordinary Bravery, and a gang boss in The Renegades. None of them resulted in fame, not quite yet. However, they constructed something different: anxiety, tension. Greatness was hovering about Patrick Swayze, but he was never quite touching it. Not quite yet. Considering that excellence doesn't knock, it crashes, and it would come with a final lift, a seductive melody, and a woman no one puts in a corner in a matter of years. What if, however, Patrick Swayze's rise to fame was limited to a single lift, a single film, and a single pivotal moment. Keep an eye out, his own corner. But when Patrick Swayze's time for greatness finally arrived, it didn't come gently. In a swirl of heat, heartache and hips, it burst through the door. It came as a movie that no studio had faith in. Instead of being a legend, Dirty Dancing was intended to be a short film, a shelf filler. The expectations were significantly lower than the budget. However, there was something in that script, in that world of summer secrets and forbidden dances, that set a fire inside Patrick that no one could put out. He transformed into Johnny Castle, burning with intensity, seductive and gloomy. He did more than simply play Johnny though. His name was Johnny, the primal sensuality, the calm strength, the pain of a person attempting to make a difference in a world that constantly reminds him that he doesn't. He brought to the character the burden of his own history, discipline of dance, the scars of rejection, and the knee had never completely forgiven him. With Jennifer Grey, every lift, look, and step was more than just a choreography. It was recollection. And he let out the now famous phrase, "Nobody puts baby in a corner." It wasn't merely a scene from the story, it was a proclamation. For Johnny, for Patrick, for all the artists who had ever been disregarded, viewers did more than simply watch the movie. They gobbled it up. Theaters were humming. Videos were flying off the shelf. And She's Like the Wind, a song Swayze co-wrote years before, unexpectedly shot to the top 10. It was played repeatedly on radio stations. Fans committed the lyrics to memory. Once dreaming of skates and scholarships, the Houston lad now dominated the screens and radio. Patrick, however, never slowed down. He didn't go with the flow. The next one he pursued. He abruptly shifted his focus from dancing to the ethereal world of love and grief in 1990. Ghost was more than a movie. It was an event. It connected with something old and painful, the fear of dying, love's hold, the wish for something to endure. Patrick was endearing, heartbreaking, and unforgettable in his role as Sam Wheat. He portrayed a man who was already dead and desperately trying to keep the lady he loved safe, in contrast to Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg. The well-known pottery scene was permanently ingrained in popular culture. Additionally, he received a Golden Globe nomination for the second time, but Ghost gave him something more than accolades. Verification. He was not a one-hit man. He did more than just dance. He had the ability to inspire faith in the supernatural. He unleashed his thrill-seeking alter ego by diving into Point Break a year later. Patrick was able to pull off skydives, surf sequences, and wild-eyed rants that combined philosophy and excitement in his role as Bodhi, the Zen surfer criminal. He was not a brave man. He had no fear. He did several of the stunts himself. He became a Hollywood legend that same year when People magazine named him the sexiest man alive. However, Patrick was never at ease in the spotlight. Red carpets and practiced interviews weren't his style. He was designed for depth, challenge and work. He zagged when everyone expected him to, of course. In 1995, he played a drag queen in To Wong Fu, shocking both critics and fans. I appreciate everything, Newmar Julie. The clothes, the heels and the cosmetics. His radiance was unaffected by any of it. If anything, it enhanced its brilliance. Stereotypes were broken by the nobility, humor and heart with which he played the part of Vita Boheme. He wasn't mocking, he showed honor. Audiences took notice. Then there was anguish. Tragic events occurred in 1997, when Letters from a Killer was being filmed. He suffered 4 torn shoulder tendons and 2 fractured legs in a horseback accident. The filming stopped. The recuperation process was harsh, and rumors spread. Has he finished? Patrick, however, did not back down. He came back. With his long-term partner, wife Lisa Nemi, he quietly ventured into smaller films, meaningful roles, and even produced a few movies. His fulcrum in All Storms. He portrayed a deranged motivational speaker in Donnie Darko in 2001. It was dark, unusual, and unlike anything he had ever done. However, it demonstrated once more that it was real. He made an impression without the attention of a main man. Patrick Swayze continued to push limits as he grew older, appearing in West End musicals, providing voiceovers for animated movies, and acting in The Beast in 2009 while battling pancreatic cancer. Despite the doctor's warnings that his discomfort was relentless, he performed each line with passion. It was dubbed his best effort by critics. Perhaps they were correct, because the struggle wasn't limited to the screen this time. He had it inside him. Nevertheless, he got up. Because Patrick Swayze was not a victim of fate, the dirty realities that lie beneath the dance floor. An old story surfaced just when it appeared that Patrick Swayze's life had found a rhythm that had settled into a magnificent dance of prosperity, popularity, and strength. One laced with tension, remorse, and unadulterated vulnerability instead of dance. Let's now go back in time and examine the specifics of the Dirty Dance. Audiences were deeply affected. It was 1987. Like a heartbeat through the veins of cinema, Dirty Dancing swept into theaters. Mesmerizing dance, sizzling romance, and a happily ever after that seemed too good to be true. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze were no longer actors. They were famous. However, the magic on screen had a separate, non-harmonious heartbeat behind the scenes. There had been another set, another movie, and an uncomfortable past before Johnny and Baby met eyes on a dance floor. Years before, in the Cold War drama Red Dawn, Jennifer and Patrick had first clashed, not out of love, but out of unease. With the same steely discipline that he brought to his martial arts training and dancing background, Patrick exuded intensity and laser-like focus. Working from emotion and vulnerability, Jennifer was all gut and heart. They collided energy. No heated debate, no public conflict, only a friction that didn't cool down completely. Jennifer was devastated to discover that he had been put alongside her on Dirty Dancing. That tension roared back into memory. Their lack of compatibility wasn't the only thing. She felt unnerved by him. However, producers remained steadfast. They needed someone who could carry the burden of romance on his shoulders and move like fire. Only Patrick was a good fit. Nevertheless, an unforeseen event occurred prior to the first camera rolling. Patrick pulled Jennifer aside just prior to their screen test. He was himself, not Johnny Castle. The stern exterior has vanished. Instead, there is naked, trembling honesty. "I cherish you. I cherish you. And I really apologize," the actress said. "And I know you don't want me to do the movie." The walls collapsed. Jennifer noticed the man behind the stance for the first time, and something changed when they moved in front of the camera. In the room, not simply between them, the tension became electrifying. What had threatened to split them now came together to form a relationship that producers knew was uncommon from away. The set, however, was anything but a dream. Even the most mundane days became endurance tests while filming in North Carolina's unrelenting summer heat. Temperaments were frayed, and costumes stuck to bodies like damp linen. Additionally, Patrick, who was already tending to a wounded knee, endured excruciating choreography while concealing his discomfort with each exact step. He was not going to let the injuries stop him. Jennifer experienced the strain in a different way. She carried the burden of expectation as the emotional center of the movie. Off camera, however, she was never completely at ease. Patrick's energy fluctuated all the time. One moment compassion, the next ice. The old tension was still there. It has just discovered new forms of expression. Even in the most well-known parts of the movie, including The Big Lift and The Last Dance, beneath the grace was conflict. He was demanding excellence. She was afraid of failing. They walked the fine line between performance and collapse together. However, they managed to provide greatness just before the edge fell away. Few people noticed how quickly Patrick's world was changing. Even though Dirty Dancing made him a household name, out of the spotlight, he was quietly building another empire. He adored vintage American muscle cars, with gleaming wheels and roaring motors, and his private garages were dotted with Harley-Davidsons. However, image wasn't the only factor. Even when he was successful, Patrick was methodical. He purchased acres of land in California and transformed it into a paradise with expansive skies and stables. His latest escape was flying, so he purchased his own plane and obtained a solo pilot's certificate. Behind the celebrity, he and his spouse Lisa established a life based on mutual aspirations and wise financial decisions. He wasn't just acting on screen, he was getting ready for the real world. Every decision, every property deed, every flight log, and every watch on his wrist revealed a man who understood that while fame was ephemeral, legacy was something that was planned. Years before others did, he even took the uncommon precaution of protecting his career and health. It wasn't paranoid. It was a foresight. Patrick had always understood the frailty of life. However, what if Dirty Dance concealed more tension than romance, and Patrick's getaways were actually calculated? Keep your eyes fixed on your screen, the spontaneous fire that underlies Dirty Dancing. However, the delicate component behind the curtain started to flicker out just as the enchantment on screen was about to burn. Despite the portrayal of passion and chemistry in Dirty Dancing, the set was a silent battlefield of conflicting approaches, unpolished nerves, and mounting animosity. Although the emotional bond that was rekindled between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze during the screen test was sincere, it was unable to erase the lingering effects of past disputes or soften the harsh edges of their diametrically opposed personalities. Ballet dancer Patrick Swayze, who has years of professional performance experience and classical training, tackled the assignment with a focused and disciplined approach. Every action, breath, and step was planned. His art was dance, and his language was accuracy. Jennifer, on the other hand, was born with instinct. She lacked formal choreography training. Her acting thrived on the unexpected, and her strength was emotional spontaneity. Once a source of artistic contrast, the difference soon turned into a dividing line. Tensions increased with the heat when production began in Lake Lure, North Carolina, in the summer of 1986. Ever the perfectionist, Patrick became more and more irritated with Jennifer's inability to match the tempo and footwork. He was renowned for his professionalism, yet every mistake made him less patient. During challenging scenes, Jennifer, who was already struggling with self-doubt, started laughing nervously. Retakes were frequent, sometimes numbering in the dozens. What ought to have been smooth turned into a grind. There were times when the two refused to talk in between takes, according to crew sources. The two would glare silently until the director called for action, at which time they would change into Johnny and Baby with ease. It wasn't just acting though. The feelings were genuine, just below their steps and lines, seething. It was more than just a show. Loathing and affection had to be delicately balanced. They had difficult rehearsals. As he worked to polish the choreography, Patrick frequently adjusted Jennifer's motions. It was collaboration to him. It felt oppressive to her. She wanted to contribute rather than just follow, yet she was afraid of being overshadowed. Production moved quickly, so feelings were set aside. Instead of harmony, a silent conflict arose. His accuracy against her feelings. Instead than confronting Patrick's passion, Jennifer retreated because it frequently felt overwhelming. Ironically, their on-screen relationship was fostered by that same friction. When Baby seemed uncertain around Johnny, it was frequently sincere, and despite the conflict, an incredible event occurred. The famous lift in The Last Dance was the scene that best captured everything. The animosity between Jennifer and Patrick had peaked by this point. The choreography was difficult. The stakes were high on an emotional level. Patrick had repeatedly betrayed Jennifer's trust, her spirit was torn, and her body was exhausted. Nevertheless, for that one instant, they succeeded. It wasn't tidy. Rehearsal wasn't flawless. However, something lined up as the camera rolled. Her terror was quelled by Patrick's power. Jennifer's weakness made him less stern. He caught her not only in the air but also in a brief magical moment of trust after she sprinted and leaped. It turned into Dirty Dancing's pivotal moment, a representation of support as well as submission. Nobody noticed the turmoil that preceded it, the emotional quagmire that lay beneath the music, or the unsaid struggles that went on behind the smiles. Since love, like dancing, isn't about flawless moves. It's no surprise that the movie struck such a deep chord. It involves falling, and hope that someone will be there to grab you and treat you. The strain underneath the elevator. However, what transpired behind the scenes was anything but elegant. Right as the film's cinematic charm peaked, as soon as Dirty Dancing moved from casting rooms to the camera floor, the tenuous peace between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze started to fall apart. Once appearing to reconcile their differences, the gentle apology now sounded like a